Next up, we have openly curious discussion habits and concrete validation of ideas, which are actually two different things, but they link together really strongly. And so, what I mean by openly curious discussion habits is really teaching yourself as a facilitator, and really, in other ways, teaching your students to actually be interested and curious about what the person is going to say next. Not looking for a specific answer that fits nicely, right? Like really being curious about what the person has to say and how it relates to the topic at hand. Because someone might say something that sounds like the first thing they say is not something that really applies to maybe the skill you're talking about, the habit you're talking about. But if you are openly curious, there's going to be some connection that you can kind of dive into and go a little bit deeper and connect to everything else you're talking about. So again, just being open to getting multiple answers, opening it up. If you only have one answer you want, you might as well just write it down and move on, right? Because again, this is a process of teaching folks that, right, we really are learning together, we're reflecting together, and there may be an answer that is different from something that I would expect, but because I'm curious about it and asking questions, we're all finding out and learning together that that was actually something really relevant and something we just hadn't thought of, okay? Another piece of this, the concrete validation of ideas, what I mean by concrete is validating it in a way that people can see, right? So in this case, most of the time I'm talking about this, I mean like literally write down people's thoughts, write down what they say on the board in front of everyone. Don't take notes in a computer, don't write it down on a pad of paper, right? Because they can't see that and what you're doing with it, and it changes the conversation, right? If you write it up on the board, what it does is two things. First, it makes it concrete and validating for the person who said it, right? Just the fact of you writing it tells them, hey, you're taking this seriously in a way that they don't feel exactly when you just say it or repeat it back at them, right? So writing on the board, you're taking that extra time, you're putting it up there, it's validating the idea. On top of that, it lets people focus on the idea so that people, the students in the class can really look and see the different ideas that are up there, which might help them make connections, right? And it might also help them do something that's really important in this context, which is talk about the ideas and not the people. So if you write it up on the board, they can look and say, hey, I noticed what so-and-so said, and I'm, gonna have a different opinion, or I'm not quite sure what that means. And what that does is that, again, they're focusing on the ideas. If you just repeat it out loud and have students talk about it, what they will do is start feeling personal because they'll be looking at each other, talking about each other, and again, not necessarily the ideas they wrote. So I really can't emphasize that piece enough. Another thing that's kind of part of this process is helping draw connections. So if you have it all written on the board, it's even easier that you can say, when someone mentions something, you can point to another idea on the board and say, hey, that's similar to what you said. Or when you're recapping later, you can point to what's on the board. Or when you're talking about a different subject, you can say, and this is similar to what so-and-so said, and again, point to the board. If you don't write it all down, that's okay. It happens. You don't always have room. It's sometimes sloppy and takes more time to write it. But really, again, it's important to connect comments to each other, right? Connect and compare what two students said to each other, and also the bigger level concept. Always be working to connect, ask deeper questions to get a little deeper, and then connect again.